by abandoning a person, the benefits gained is greater in the sense that it weakens or lessens that evil, it is permissible. Because the aim is to rectify the one you are leaving and to prevent others from following him in that evil. But then what do they say? Pay attention. However, if neither the one who you're to abandon nor anyone else will turn away from that evil, but instead the evil will grow, or the one you want to abandon is weak in his religion, whereby which the evil resulting from abandoning him is greater than any benefit gained, here it is impermissible to abandon him. Rather, to act kindly to some people is better than forsaking them. Look at the great fiqh of our Salaf. Look at the Salafi fiqh. Look at the fiqh that understands our religion. Not the fiqh of youth who do not know the difference between halal and haram, and people who want to incite fitna and then make lies against the Salafi way. What is Ibn Taymiyyah saying? He is saying that the benefit and abandonment, if it is greater because it results in weakening that evil or lessening that evil, then it's permissible. But however, if you're to abandon a person, that's not going to make him stop doing that evil. Or the evil will grow. Or the one you want to abandon is weak in his religion. And by leaving him, he's going to go into more danger, more evil. Then it becomes forbidden for you to leave him. For as Ibn Taymiyyah has said, to act kindly to some people is better than to forsake them. To act kindly to some people is better than to forsake them. Then they quote Ibn Taymiyyah further. Ibn Taymiyyah says this is comparable, this principle is comparable to what is legislated regarding the enemy. What is legislated for the Muslims regarding the enemy, meaning the unbelievers. It is legislated to fight them at times, to make peace with them at times, and also at other times to take jizya from them. We are sometimes to fight the unbelievers. We are sometimes to make peace or have a cessation of hostilities with the unbelievers. And at other times we take jizya from the unbelievers. All of that is according to the situation at hand and the benefits obtained. The response of the scholars like Ahmed and others regarding this issue is based upon this principle. So therefore, brothers, the idea that any single person who makes a mistake, any single person who makes an error, you have to abandon him is not from a da'wah salafiyah, as you have now seen. And this was taken from Ibn Taymiyyah's Fatawa, volume 28, page 206. The brothers then write, regarding the mubtada', the heretic, whose heresy, his bid'ah, does not reach the level of kufr, unbelief, that takes one outside of Islam, his abandonment falls under the principles of the Sharia. And then they quote Ibn Taymiyyah, again, if good and evil, wickedness and obedience to Allah, adhering to the sunnah and bid'ah is present in a single individual, he merits, he deserves alliance and reward to the degree of the good that is in him. And he merits and deserves enmity and punishment to the degree that evil's in him. Gather for him this and that. Treat him in both ways. Like the poor thief, one cuts his hand for thievery, and yet he is still given from the treasury, the Bayt al-Mal, what fills his need. This is a fundamental of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah have all agreed to. And in this they were opposed by the Khawarij, the Mu'tazila, and those in agreement with them. This is from page 209 of the Fatawa. In other words, the idea is that, for instance, we are going to only be kind with the sinful, and we will sometimes leave them and sometimes not abandon them, but if a person makes a bid'ah, we always abandon him. It's not from the principles of the Salaf. But rather, when a person has good and evil in him, wickedness and obedience in him, sunnah and bid'ah in him, we treat with him in both ways. We show him alliance as he deserves, and wala as he deserves, and we also distance ourselves from him as he deserves, depending upon how much good and evil is in him. And then what did Ibn Taymiyyah say? That this is the same thing like the poor thief. You know, when a thief steals, we cut his hand. But if he's poor, we still give him from Bayt al-Mal. We don't say because he's a thief, we let him starve to death. Because he has a right to that money. Because he's a Muslim. But at the same time, since he stole, we have to cut his hand. So we deal with him in both manners. And likewise, Ibn Taymiyyah then said that this fundamental is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah have agreed to. This is something in agreement between Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And they were opposed by this by the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila and those who have gone in agreement with the Mu'tazila and the Khawarij. So now when brothers whenever a person makes any mistake, they abandon themselves from them, whether that mistake is a true mistake, whether it truly is a bid'ah or not, because most of the brothers and sisters do not have knowledge to distinguish between that which is truly an innovation and that which is not an innovation. And yet they distance themselves from the people. They're not following the principles of Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah, they're following the principles of the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila. And are Salafis Khawarij or are they from Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah? And then the brothers say that the distinction between the deed and the doer, whether that pertains to kufr, unbelief, or heresy, bid'ah, there is a distinction between the two. It is not necessary that if either infidelity or heresy proceeds from a Muslim that he is to be charged as an infidel, a kafir, or a heretic, a mubtada, until the conditions for such a judgment are fulfilled in him and the prohibitions for applying such a judgment are negated from him. What is this trying to say? That just because a person says or does an act of bid'ah, it does not mean he is a mubtada. And just because a person says or does an act of kufr, it does not mean he is a kafir. There is a distinction between the deed and the doer. And one cannot charge a person as a kafir or as a mubtada, an unbeliever or heretic, unless all the conditions regarding that have been fulfilled and all the prohibitions, the impediments that stop you from applying such a judgment have been negated. And then they quote Ibn Taymiyyah, and he says, it is not necessary that if a statement is kufr, that all who utter it, because out of ignorance or trying to understand the Quran or the Sunnah, ta'wil, have become a kafir, have become an unbeliever. Not everyone who says kufr is a kafir. For affirming kufr, unbelief, with regard to a specific individual is like affirming divine punishment with regard to him in the hereafter. When you say a person is a kafir, you are saying in the same way that Allah will punish him in the hereafter. It's the same thing. And so therefore Ibn Taymiyyah says, as we have explained elsewhere, this has its conditions and its negations. In other words, saying when a person is a kafir or not has its conditions that must be fulfilled and matters which must be negated before you call a person a kafir, even if he says kufr. And then Ibn Taymiyyah says, if such individuals are not to be considered kuffar, unbelievers, then they are likewise not hypocrites, munafiqun. Because every hypocrite is an unbeliever. The only difference is that the unbeliever has become open with his unbelief and the hypocrite hides it. And then Ibn Taymiyyah says, and hence likewise they are among the believers. They are likewise among the believers. So therefore, if they're not kuffar, unbelievers, if they're not hypocrites, munafiqun, that means they're what? Mu'minun, believers. Because there's only three categories. Either a believer, an unbeliever, or a hypocrite. There's nothing else. There's no fourth category. And if they're believers, what does Ibn Taymiyyah say? One should ask Allah to forgive them and seek Allah's mercy for them. One should ask Allah to forgive them and seek Allah's mercy for them, because they are believers. And then Ibn Taymiyyah says that when a believer recites the verse or makes the dua, رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا that when a believer says, رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَ بِالْإِيمَانِ, that our Lord forgive us and our brothers who have preceded us in faith, then therefore he implies everyone who has preceded him from this ummah in faith, even if that person has committed a sin or an error and has opposed the sunnah. For such a person is still among his brethren and have preceded him in faith, and he still enters into the general context of this verse, even if he's among the 72 sects. So when one recites this verse, Rabbana, our Lord, Ighfir lana, forgive us, Wali ikhwanina, and our brethren who have preceded us in faith, Alladhina sabaquna bil iman. This includes every one of this ummah, even if he's from the 72 sects who have preceded you in faith, because he's still part of this ummah. For there is not a single sect from the 72 sects, except that among the ranks are many individuals who are not unbelievers, but rather believers who have erred and sinned, and as a result of which